Thanks for tuning in to episode 22 of the Together Michelle podcast. Up front, I want to say that we do talk about suicide and depression, and neither our guest, Joe, or I are experts on the topic. We're just three men coming together to talk about our experiences and offer some of our thoughts in an open and honest conversation. So going in, just know that, and also know that the United States has a lifeline now, 988. Just dial it if you feel like you want to talk with somebody.
Joe Orth and I are starting a podcast. What should we call it?
Hey, don't pick on me. You know why? Because this is why. Let's see what he says.
The Joe Show?
Give Joe the business.
That's right.
Cup of Joe. Cup of Joe.
What is happening here?
Would you listen?
We'll give you a chance.
Thank you.
That's Joe.
That's Rooster.
What's happening, brother?
Nothing, man.
Yeah.
Nothing.
You know, sometimes you got to get off. Sometimes you got to get off script. You know, usually like, this is the Together We Shall podcast, episode 22. You know, it's cool, dude. Everybody knows. If you clicked on the button, then you know what this is. It's episode.
But not everybody.
Well, okay, so should we do it again? That's Joe.
That's Rooster. No,
And
that's
this,
stupid.
see, no, that's cheesy.
Yeah.
We're not doing that. Let's just jump in, man. How are you?
Well, I think it's like the jump in too because like I saw you 36 hours ago. Like
That's
whatever it was. So it's like,
Yeah.
hello again.
Yeah.
What did you do
Yeah.
yesterday? I didn't see you.
I drove many miles away from you back to my home, and I'm here now. So yeah, exactly. I don't even know. What do you want to talk about?
I don't know, man. Like we just came off the 10th anniversary of the Marine Corps half marathon down here at Camp Lejeune, and a special race for Ainsley Angels in North Carolina, Eastern North Carolina. You, your family. But this is the first year that I've finally been able to do it. And man, did I pick a good year to do it. Lord. Yeah.
Yeah.
Old
yeah.
Swamp Lagoon lived up to its name. My feet are still wet.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
first from like 5 a.m. to probably like 7:30 a.m. It was torrential downpour, and then the
Nice.
sun opens up. So you gotta love that part. It's really fun. But yeah, no, that was cool. It was good. And then we had a dinner Saturday night. Got to see everybody. It was fun. 10 years. Just so proud of Michelle and what she's done down there. I was wanting to ask though. I didn't ask you this weekend. In episode 21, you said you were going to the Red Hot Chili Pepper concert, and the question was, why did the Chili Peppers cost more than Garth Brooks at the same venue? So what's the answer?
I don't know. I think it's because Garth did 2 nights and sold out both nights, so they had some flexibility in their pricing. I don't know, but seeing 2 legends of the music industry and Garth and Chili Peppers in the same venue, like 50 days apart, that was pretty cool. And then I came here and went to OAR, a band that Leanne and I like 2 days after that. So like I'm smoked a little bit from concerts.
Yeah, no, that's pretty cool. And our guest today has actually got some music history, so maybe he could provide his insight on all those fabulous entities you just mentioned. But you know, I really don't want to ask any more questions, dude. I want to get into this thing. There's a lot. September is a special month for a lot of people in a lot of ways. And you remember we talked before back in May about how May was Mental Health Awareness Month. And remember we were like, yeah, like every day there's something. Today's Taco Bell get a burrito day, and tomorrow's like, you know, call your mom day, and what, you know. So this month it's got something too. What were you gonna say?
So like tangent, right? My most recent drill was on September 11th. Everybody knows what happened September 11th, 21 years ago. Well, I had a Marine, a Lance Corporal, walk in and sit down, and he gets on the computer and he's like, let's see what today is. And like he does like the Bing or Google search where it's like, it's National Hot Dog Day. And he's like, oh, it's National 401k Day. It's National Wear Your Shoes Backwards Day. And then he's going, and everyone's staring at him like, bro. And then he's like, oh shit. It's like, yeah, dude. But it was crazy that like
Yeah,
the
it's 9/11
anniversary was like the 5th thing down on this list of antics. But yeah, rant, silliness over. Way to go, Max. He doesn't listen to this,
Yeah.
but
Maybe he should. I don't know. It's National Listen to Together We Shall podcast day. Max, tune in, dude. Anyway, without further ado, today we have a great guest. A lot of our listeners may remember him. He came into the Ainsley Angels Facebook family group and did one of our Q&As with us. But I'm gonna give you some titles that represent this man. So he's a historian, a writer, a coach, an entrepreneur, a business owner, a father, a husband, an athlete, a triathlete, an angel runner, a podcast host, our great friend of Ainsley's Angels of America, Pat Fellows. Pat, welcome to the show.
Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate it. It's also it's sourdough September. It's potato appreciation month. It's there's a whole lot of like injury and it's pain awareness, prostate health, sickle cell, polycystic ovarian syndrome, and spinal cord injury all in September. My God. I started looking this morning and it just never ended.
Can we just pick one?
I mean, potato month seemed pretty strong. They kind of threw that in. It was like second to last on the list was like, it's National Potato Month. I'm like, y'all making stuff up now.
But in all sincerity, correct me if I'm wrong, isn't it Suicide Awareness or Suicide Prevention Month? One of the other?
That was one of them listed in there. I can't remember where it was on the list. On any day of the week, it's 50 different days.
Today has National Video Game Day, Boss Employee Exchange Day, so like you switch roles. National Chocolate Milkshake Day, that's one I can probably get behind. National Police Woman Day.
Yeah.
Jesus, Medicare Fraud Day. United Nations Day.
Stop. Really? Medicaid Fraud Day?
Every year, America loses 10% of Medicare funds to fraud.
So is today the day I'm supposed to do Medicaid fraud? Am I supposed to?
Hopefully you're not a victim, I guess. I don't know.
I don't know what I'm supposed to do.
Good gosh. I don't even know what I'm supposed to do now. I do know I should probably move the conversation somewhere past month, day, and the fact that the Chinese said this is the year of the rooster or something. I mean, even the years have things, even though that was a couple years ago. I saw both of your faces. This isn't the year of the rooster. And I'd be gosh dang if I don't tell you, every year is the year of the rooster, gentlemen. Just know this.
We know.
Now, what is it, the rat?
Stop. No, we're moving on. We're moving forward. Pat, Pat, what is happening? Why are you on the podcast and where are you? That's something we like our guests to know. Where are you? Why are you here?
I'm in Baton Rouge right now, getting ready to start the Fresh Junkie Racing race season kicks off this week. We basically picked up 8 different St. Jude races in 8 different cities on 3 weekends. So it's a big jump. Usually September is kind of a get ready for the fall, but it is here and it won't stop until what we call the All-Star break after Mississippi, right? Like we get a break between Mississippi and Louisiana, and but it's going to be pedal to the metal until then. So that's what's going down right now.
So for folks that don't realize it, when you say Fresh Junkie, there's our people listening that have no idea what that means. So tell them what Fresh Junkie is in all of its ways, restaurants and racing, please.
Yeah, so Fresh Junkie was the restaurant that I have that still do a couple salad places, but Fresh Junkie Racing began when Jonathan Juba and I started coaching some athletes. At the same time, Craig Sweeney and I had been putting on the Louisiana Marathon and some other events. Juba got involved with that. Pato eventually got involved in that. We started taking on more events. So Fresh Junkie Racing is now 5 people. It's me, Patrick O'Brien, Jonathan Juba, Craig Sweeney, and Mike Watney. And together, Fresh Junkie Racing is the company that executes Louisiana Marathon, Mississippi Gulf Coast Marathon, Amazing Half Marathon, 13, 14 events that we own, 20 something that we're executing this year. And I still coach a few athletes, but it evolved over the last 9 years into something much more. And we're currently growing fast. So in a good way.
Yeah, we love it, man. And of course, Louisiana Marathon has been a staple in Ainsley's Angels of America execution since that January of 2014 when we were accepted to come in there and be part of it. And we've been there every year since, and we're grateful for that relationship. So it's wonderful to have the growth of the Fresh Junkie racing world too, because we've partnered at that level too. So we have our riders doing the preponderance of the races. So that's cool.
Yeah, for sure. I know we all have a pretty good showing at do y'all do Battleship 12K in Alabama? Tuscaloosa, y'all have done the Tuscaloosa half as well. I wasn't sure if y'all were at the War Eagle event, the Auburn, kind of like Tiger 10K, but at Auburn. I don't know that we got permission to do that
you know this is going to go right onto a tangent. So a company founded footsteps away from Death Valley in Baton Rouge
Yep.
hosts the Tiger 10K. That's really
Yeah.
cool. But you also do the War Eagle. Like that
Yeah,
doesn't like ruffle some feathers with some folks.
better
I
not.
mean, it's business, right? I get it.
Yeah.
But, man.
I mean, look, we're about trying to create cool experiences and take them to different people. Not everybody. I mean, I'm an LSU fan, but I'm also, you know, I leave it on Saturday night. Sunday morning, I'm pretty much whatever. But I also came to LSU in 1989, and I was explaining to my son. We went to the game last week, and I was like, dude, we were terrible for 5 years. So like, I wasn't a fan growing up. Came to LSU, we sucked for 5 years, and then after that started slowly getting better. But I mean, I'd been in Baton Rouge for 14 years before they won the national championship with Saban in 2003, and it was abysmal for 2/3 of that.
Well, to put into context, just because you started to give some history there, take us back real fast. Like, where were you born?
Born in Michigan and right outside Detroit, and then in Dearborn, and then like 3 weeks before I turned 7, our family moved to Long Beach, Mississippi. Like, so 1,000 miles due south to like a block from the Gulf of Mexico. My dad was recruited to come down, and he was big into sailing, and he was like, I can sail all year round. I'm in. And then so I was there from second grade till my senior year. I graduated and then came to LSU in 1989. And I've been here ever since. Besides a stint in Austin for some fun, but
Well, Austin, the music capital, got a lot of music going on. We know you have some musicality.
yes,
Talk to us
yes.
about, tell us a little bit about your music past.
Yeah, so I came to school and started a band and played in that band for about 4 years. It was called Mean Tree. We toured around the southeast. That was a blast. And then afterwards had another band and played until I guess I was about the 2000. I finally decided I was 29 and I had to start being something when I grew up. And so I kind of quit doing that, and it kind of coincided with getting healthy. I wasn't working in bars and restaurants and playing in bands and staying out till 3 in the morning anymore. And I started doing triathlons, and it was a big joke because there's always that balance of like, I still want to stay out till 3 in the morning and have a good time, but I'm supposed to meet these guys at 5:30 a.m. and run. Like, these things aren't jiving. And there were some rough, very green mornings on some of those runs as I tried to juggle those two things. But eventually, like, all right, I guess I'm gonna move along here.
For sure. Yeah, no, you mentioned the whole 3 a.m., 4 a.m., and then get up and run. And I made me think back to those days whenever I used to enjoy the late evenings. And I had to fight the urge, and I can't help myself, but like, it's Miller time, ladies and gentlemen. I wanted to make sure that we got into this earlier than later. Miller time is that favorite part of the show whenever we have a moment where we invite you to grab your favorite beverage. If you're too fed, get your caregiver, slap them up, and say, come on, man, give me some of the good stuff. Whatever makes you happy. We're not advocating that you drink alcohol. In fact, today I'm going to go with Celsius. Celsius is not a sponsor
Yet.
but we're still working. So if you know anybody who would like to be a sponsor of the Together We Shall podcast, let us know. Pat, what are you going to drink during Miller time?
More of the rest of the pot of coffee from this morning.
Okay.
The rest of, is that like just your pot?
I drink a lot of coffee. I mean, we make a 12 or 14 cup pot of coffee in the morning, and my wife has like one and a half of that, and I have the rest.
Good gosh. So that's
Black,
a lot.
I assume.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And you mentioned a wife. Did you meet her while you were rocking and rolling? Two questions.
A little bit.
What genre of music, and when
It
did
was
you
rock.
meet your wife?
Yeah, it was rock, and I met my wife in '97, so I was still playing music. I jokingly say I met her at my worst, so like, it's always like I just get better and better for her, right? She doesn't agree, but I was kind of not, I don't want to say a screw up, but I wanted to be in a band. I mean, like, I worked let me put it to you this way. I was the first of 9 bachelors to get married at 30.
Wow.
And we either all owned a restaurant, managed a restaurant, owned a bar, managed a bar. It was like a nonstop, like, and nobody was settling down.
So you met her, you were 27, a couple years later, said you started getting healthy and doing triathlons. Were y'all married when that happened?
We got married shortly thereafter. So like we met in 2097, we got married in 2001. I started doing triathlons in 2001. And in March of 2000, we went on a trip together, went skiing, and I was on the bunny hill and like ate an edge on a snowboard and ripped my shoulder apart and had surgeries and whatnot. And that was when I was like, all right, I'm 29, I'm in decent shape for not doing much positive over the last decade for my health. I might as well try to work on stuff. And so that's when I started back training when I was 29. I started swimming again to rehab my shoulder, and a fraternity brother of mine I ran into, he's like, man, you should do triathlon because nobody can swim. I was like, well, that's fine. And I'd been doing some spin classes to try to lose some of the sitting around in a sling for 12 weeks weight. Um, and I was like, but I don't run. He's like, what do you mean you don't run? I was like, I've never run. Like I ran a 10K when I was 9. I led for the first 400 and promptly got last. And then I think that, when I was swimming, they would do dry land stuff and we started doing some running. And I was always the kid. It was like this long rectangular block, and I would run out until everybody was out of view. And then I would cut through a backyard and just wait there and not run and wait till they passed by, and then file in behind them and be the last little one running in because I didn't like it.
This was for track practice. This is track
It was for
practice.
swim. It was just like extra stuff for swimming.
I just wanted to clarify for those listening that Pat didn't like hear the gun go off, run 500 meters, hide behind a house, and then pump back in to cross the finish line for the
No, this is two different related things, but both of them were terrible. But I did a 10K with my dad, I think, and my mom. I don't remember if she did it, but I went off. The gun went off, and I was, like every 9-year-old, I was leading the race, ran about, a half a mile, and then was like,
yeah.
and then walked the rest of it until like I finished an hour and a half later.
Got it. I'm clear. And so now you have you, your wife, and some children, and you're still living in Baton Rouge, and you're doing all the things. That's where you're at.
I am. I'm doing. I still race usually once or twice a year. Usually something longer. I'm doing Ironman in Chattanooga, so I kind of try to keep honest. And unfortunately, with the way our business works, we don't get to race a whole lot during racing seasons because we're putting on all the races. But I try to keep something on, hanging over me so I just don't go sweatpants.
Well, one year we convinced you to come to October during the midst of racing season and ran with our Ainsley's Angels family. How was that? What's your memories of that?
Well, my first memory was coming down one of the hills. It had been raining that morning, coming down one of the hills, like, and flying, and we dropped like a 7:10 mile, and then like you pass under the interstate and have like a hard left, and then I don't know, it was like mile 4 or 5, somewhere in there, and we head out, and we're out there, I guess, close to the Blue Mile. Isn't that what they call it?
Yeah.
We're out near the halfway point, and I look over to Juba. I'm like, dude, what's your half marathon PR? And he tells me, it's like, we're like 141 or 142 right now. Like, we're crushing your marathon goal. Like, that was mile 13.1. At mile 15, I wanted to stop. Like, it turned around. It like ended like that. The last 3 or 4 miles, I think I did most of the pushing because I couldn't go back and forth anymore. Like, my body was either going to be here pushing or I was going to be walking. Like I tried a couple times. I told Juba, I was like, hey, dude, like, I can't do anything. Like, that's it.
That's a real thing. Like Rooster has there's this ongoing joke about like, I need the chair. Yeah. And that was me a little bit on Saturday. Coming at the end, I was just like, because you can't going back and forth. And yeah, you needed that chair. Rooster needs that chair.
Well, and we did nothing to prepare for it, right? Like, we just get there, and Ashton had got a brand new chair the day before, or we were borrowing a chair. I can't remember what the deal was, but the front wheel was off of true, and so like you had to every like 5 seconds lean back and straighten it for the whole day. And then we were like, do we stop and mess with it? And like, we're like, well, I mean, I just don't know. Like, and then I think we did once, and then it started doing it the other direction. We were like, F it, just like get it somewhere where it's going as straight as it can go and finish. But I mean, we had a blast, right? Like, we were both coaching athletes at the time. And I remember us laughing afterwards and like, we got done. It was like, we did every single thing wrong. Like that, like if we had an athlete and they did what we just did, we would be laughing at them and going, "You dummy! Like you didn't." Like I don't think we had a sip of anything to drink for the first 9 miles or something. I mean, it was just complete idiocy. We got all we deserved. We deserved it.
And Ashton was a blast.
Oh yeah, it was fun, man. He had a great time. There's probably an advantage to not knowing a whole heck of a lot when you do something like that. You just go out there and get it done.
Yeah.
The coach now though in you, like, because a friend of mine just had not the performance they wanted at Ironman Atlantic City.
Yeah,
we're talking about like plans. I just can't have a plan because that one thing is going to just derail it. It's like guaranteed. Murphy's showing up in some capacity during that.
So,
How do you handle that?
Well, I think that, what I try to prepare athletes for, especially with an Ironman, every mistake, once you start going past like 9 and 10 hours, is an exponential effect, right? Like if you don't have nutrition, you can't catch that up. And so what I try to explain to people is just kind of what you just said is like, hey, something is going to go wrong. Like we're going to have a plan. This is how we're going to execute it. I make sure that my athletes are in each part of the race. Like, hey, let's not worry about going what the total time is. If you concentrate on swimming and executing the swim, executing your transition, executing the bike, executing your second transition, and then execute the run and execute nutrition over all of that, you're probably going to give yourself a good chance at hitting your time goals. But you have to be in each part of the race and you have to be ready to adjust on the fly because something's going to go wrong and it's how you adjust to those things that affect your day. Things start going south and they can either crater you or you can recover and the rest of your race can actually be better, right? But it's all mindset and it's all trying to have a plan of it's kind of like whatever the adage is like what's going to happen when you get punched in the face, right? Like you're not going to know how to react until somebody does it, right? And so just being able to have, it's not necessarily an overarching plan, it's a plan for how do you handle when things don't go exactly how you think they're going to go.
I love that, and I love how we can take all of that and correlate it to life, frankly, because the prescription that you just spelled out the past minute can easily translate from a triathlon course, biathlon, marathon, 5K to frankly every day. At some point today, something is not going to go the way you anticipated it. And there's so many things that we can do to prepare ourselves for that. But those things, we can't be like anticipating the bad thing or like always waiting for the bad thing, but rather getting into a groove that allows you to be at the high of the wave and start to fall off the wave and be able to get back up to the wave because you've got things underneath you.
Racing, life, all sorts of things, like tackling each thing and being in whatever you're doing in that moment. It's that talking about being present.
The snowball effect that can be, my nutrition was wrong, or I've got a blister forming on the bottom of my foot, and I'm about to tackle a 4, 5, 6 hour event or longer. Take that same thing to, here I am in life. I woke up this morning and my tire's flat. Like you have to figure out how you're going to have a plan to persevere through and having a mindset that is calm, that says, I'm not going to let that ruin the whole entire day or month or year. Just like I'm not going to let it affect the whole race. But, and where I think I want to go from here really is to say, what do we do when we hit those situations where we can't seem to escape the things that just keep bogging us down?
So you're speaking way beyond just during a race, but I think that it depends on the situation, right? There's some people that are more wired to be negative all the time, that are more wired, and those things. That's how they tend to look at everything, and everything becomes kind of self-fulfilling. And sometimes that's super hard to get out of. I tend to be kind of matter of fact with things, and eventually for me, like if I'm in a tailspin of some sort, can go, hey man, like stop. You got to, get your head out of your rear end. Like you've got it pretty good, and just stop. And kind of like hard reset. Like, and it happens for me, every year or so. Like maybe every 6 months, sometimes 90 days. I get into these kind of lulls like that, and I have to either through, sometimes it's a friend going, hey man, what the fuck is going on with you? Like, why, you've been like this for like a month. What's going on? Because you just kind of get in those where you're just churning. So,
Yeah, and I'm asking you this, Pat, because I've paid attention to your writings through the
yeah,
years. I mentioned at the upfront that you write. You have
yeah,
a blog.
yeah,
You've been very transparent through the years since I've known you about kind of some of the cycle of being really at the abyss or at the trough of the wave, and how that cycle you found a way to get back up to the high of the wave.
for sure.
And ultimately, what I'm trying to get out here, man, is like nestled in there somewhere could have been some really dark things. I know there have been, and so I'm trying
Right.
to move us towards what can we do when it's just almost pitch black in the room and we cannot find a light
I
in
guess,
life.
yeah. Well, and I guess, so first off, I think, and what I was kind of getting at the beginning is, I think that I tend to be, I'm wired, and I say wired, I would imagine it's probably chemical of in some way towards being depressed. Like since I was a kid, I've always been that way. Um, I will say though that I feel that most of my stuff becomes more environmental depression as opposed to just like straight up chemically. You know what I mean? And what I'm getting at is that there's people out there. I don't want to say that the things that help me get through depressive episodes are better than medication for some people or different things like that. I get, like, first off and foremost, there's a couple different ways to look at being depressed. And so all I can kind of talk about is where I come from. I've never been medicated for depression. Um, I remember when I was maybe 14 or 15, my parents had a dust up and were separated for a while. And 14 is a rough time of your life as it is. And I went to some therapy then. And then again, maybe my senior year, I think I did. And then I realized my senior year and my second go around with a therapist was that I figured out the game. Like I could tell them what they wanted to hear, and I could get out of there. Like I could play through it. So the first time around, I really did get a lot of benefit from it. The second time around, I did it for a little while, and then I just started kind of telling them what they wanted to hear, and I quit doing that. So from that point until now, I've pretty much tried to go things alone. Uh, you know, and for better or worse, I don't think it's probably perfect. Um, I do write a lot to kind of vent what's going on, uh, much to the chagrin sometimes of my family, because I'm not one that's like, hey, here's everything before I'm going to put it out.
Yeah,
Sometimes they read about it on the internet, and
yeah,
that can cause some friction. Um, but for me, writing about those things, I can't write about them and keep them in a file somewhere. Like if they're not out into the open, they don't do me any good for whatever reason, right? Like it doesn't feel completed.
so you're writing these thoughts and stream of consciousness and you're doing your thing, and it's therapeutic in the process of the writing, but it's not completely finished until you put it out in the world. And I'm having a connection point there because I did weekly word and it worked me through my grief of Ainsley's passing and all those things. And sometimes I would do a weekly word and release feelings that I never shared with my wife. And at
Right.
one point we had to have conversation about that, Lori and I did. But I felt the same thing, Pat, and I want to pull the string a little. Like, what is it about until we hit send and upload it and it's out there that it's not complete? Like, what is that?
I don't know. For me, I think I had somebody message me. It was actually pretty recently, and it was like, "How can you share the things you share and or be vulnerable? Call it whatever you want, and not want to like throw up? How do you do that? And I said, so maybe I'm cocky, maybe I'm an egomaniac and like the attaboys. Like I'm not going to say I don't like part of that. Like I like the interaction with people. I truly enjoy. I hope that somebody else, one person gets something out of it, like every single time. But the other thing to me is I never look at it as being necessarily vulnerable. I look at it kind of as a strength as opposed to something negative, if that makes sense. I don't look at it as like a, oh, I'm doing this and oh, what everybody going to think less of me. I look at sharing and being honest as a strength.
Bingo. And I do want to speak to that because the word vulnerable for years, for all of our 40, 50 years, the word vulnerable has always been seen as a weakness.
Right.
And I think we might start be turning the tide here in social circles, where to be vulnerable is not to be weak. It is to be completely transparent and open to feeling and to sharing those feelings.
Yeah.
And that, man, when you're writing and you're going through your musing and you're doing your thing, and like you're going places that are deep, 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 and it's therapeutic to get that out there. But I also think that it can be an example to others to embrace vulnerability.
Well, and I think that people will look at Joe, they'll look at you, they'll look at me, and they'll have a perception of what success looks like, right? They'll look at us as successful guys, and each in our own right in something, and they'll have an idea of who that person is. And when somebody, I think that they look at in a certain light, shares something that they experience, they go, "Oh, well, how could that guy feel that? Like he seems to be have everything going for him, and he's a successful, and he's this, and blah 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 blah. Like how can he feel that way? I feel that way, and I don't feel like anybody." And so to me, that's a big power in sharing things. I mean, I think I sometimes, you know, I was talking with a friend about the things that I'm good at writing. One of the things I think I'm decent at making people feel nostalgia. So I'll sometimes write about like the 90s and kind of happy-go-lucky stuff and just different things from like maybe the 80s through the 90s, right? Like music, and they're always kind of, I wrote recently about a car I had, and everybody was like, "This is so cool," and they all told stories about their cars and whatever. It was great. But then in the next day, I'll talk about being like in this, either that I'm talking about like super deep, depressing, like spinning and anxiety and waking up in the morning and just feeling like, holy shit, it's going to be like this forever. Right. And then the third thing is probably overly cynical opinions of music. I tend to write about a lot about the
Oh,
things that
don't
I
even
don't
get me
like.
going. No,
But
bro. I was gonna let.
I never know what's going to resonate. I don't proofread much except for grammar. But it's like it's in and out. I don't rewrite that much. I don't do anything. It's just here's the idea. This is the day. Boom, it's gone and it's out. And there'll be times no bullshit. Like the next day, I'll be like, I don't even remember what I wrote about. Like I'll have to go back and look at it because it's like it spills out and I'm done.
I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you to tell everybody where they can find all your writing.
Yeah, so it's just under my name. It's under patrickfellows.com, and I'll usually will copy it and paste it into Instagram as well.
In your writing too, like the stream and flow of consciousness is cool, especially there's no pattern, right?
Yeah,
And potentially standard, like because like as someone that does not like reading,
right.
every time you text me something and says read this, I read, I'm like, damn, that was cool. And that's what's really interesting about yours. And I think it's neat too that like both of you are like, I would assume not the norm when it comes to weekly words and writing. I think the norm is the diaries and the journals, and they keep it under the bed, and they don't share it. And I mean, that's a lot of like songwriters, right? They
Right.
write their feelings, but they don't want to be a musician because they don't want to be the one that performs it and then the audience know it's them.
Right.
So there's like your writing tied back to your musical career is all connected, obviously.
Yeah. I mean, it was maybe 2021. It was after COVID, I know, or maybe in the middle, whatever. But I remember a specific time I was sitting there. It was like, I've always been this. Like, I am not the best guitar player. I've never been like a shredder. I use the guitar to write songs to express feelings, right? Like that's how I always treated music. Like I was never in a band that could play every Guns N' Roses song. Like I wasn't that guy. Instead I was writing my own songs and putting out music. And so 2021 February, I was like, I'm a writer. Like I've always been a writer. Like that I feel like is as much of my talent in life. It's kind of like I took a hiatus, right? Like I was always kind of writing some blog posts and here and there, and then I would be real productive for a while and then would kind of go away. But it's been a constant my whole life. And so, I just commit to it and just kind of let it be what it is on any given day. And sometimes again, full circle, it'll be like 4 days in a row where it's just all this depressing shit. And well, that's just because that's what Monday through Wednesday was. And then Thursday wasn't so bad. And so, then it went a different way for a while. And it doesn't have a niche, Joe. I mean, like a lot of people have been like, oh, you should write a book, you should write this, you should write that. I'm like, about what? Because I don't ever I don't have some like, this is my goal, this is my point of view, listen to me. Like that's not how it's 100% just my thoughts. So it's a weird thing.
Yeah. So you talked about waking up and writing. Like, do you think you're like consciously thinking about that, like while you're sleeping or not sleeping,
If I am going through, a valley and I'm not in a great headspace, then there's going to be 3 or 4 that could be pretty bad. I've tried to break myself. I used to use as a writing crutch. I used to find myself writing about why I wasn't writing. I'm like, stop that. And I do actually pass some of the things by my wife now so that she doesn't have to read them in real time on the internet and go, oh, it would have been cool if you would have told me about this beforehand.
After you're finished writing, do you find that you feel better? Is it therapeutic, this process, this exercise?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that, working out is another thing that I do because of that. I think that it's something that, works just like medication. Getting up at first thing in the morning, putting down miles, getting in the pool. I can wake up and be as anxious as possible, like feel like my heart's racing when it's not, but just wake up and just be like really on edge and go hit the pool, and by 500 yards in, I'm not thinking about that anymore. And there's also, but full circle, there's been times that I've been so like depressed. Like there's been multiple times in my life that I'm 4 miles from home and I'm just stopped in the middle of the street. Like what I'm like, just completely like shut down. And like, all right, well, I'm 4 miles from home, so I guess I got to run home now. But like, you know, depression does that, man. It's not set in stone how you're going to react to things and how things are going to help you. I find that over time, you ask me, one of the first things you ask me is like, what are the things that I can do to crawl out of a hole? Exercise is number one. Exercise is probably my number one thing since 2000.
Let's be clear about what exercise is. Frankly, exercise is movement. Will you buy that, Coach? Just movement.
Yeah, I mean, well, you have to want to do it. Like you don't have to do what I do. What it means for me and what it means for you and what elicits the release could be different. Like you'll never catch me lifting weights. I just don't do it. I hate it. I don't like being in the gym. It goes too slow for me. I want to get on my bike and ride to the edge of puking sometimes. Like I want to go run hard. Sometimes I want to go run easy, but like I want, if I get in the pool and there's other people in the pool, I'm like, all right, they may not be racing, but I'm racing every lap. We're going to go hard. Like that's my release.
So the listeners out there that are not avid bikers and avid runners and weightlifters, my point for saying movement is really the key. Is it's getting something within the chemicals, the endorphins, the things you get when you're writing, the things you get when you're moved to the edge of the lakes of LSU and you're puking in the water, all the things that stop you in your tracks at 4 miles from your house, and then what you do to overcome that moment when depression hits you 4 miles from your house, and somehow you get home. That you had to move, you had to do something. Right?
Yeah.
I don't know. by no means am I, like you, trying to act as if I'm a doctor or something or some expert on this. But our life experiences have shown us that when it gets so dark and you feel like overwhelmed, and maybe you even want to call it a day, sometimes just moving can
Well,
change.
I think that, and I also think it's like it's a thing that you can control every day, right? Like it's a thing in gaining some control of what's going on in your life. I mean, because let's face it, like what I was saying about like pull yourself out of it. Like I have to pull myself out of things. Like if I sit in my house all day by myself and dwell on shit that's bugging me, like it's just spinning and going deeper and deeper and deeper. I find that if I get in my car and I go to the restaurant, I spend time doing this and I spend time doing that, and I've gone and interacted with people and I've maybe worked out or maybe, you know what I mean? I've had some interactions. All of a sudden I've forgotten about those things. Like, the things we feed grow. So like if we're sitting there feeding it and not getting out and saying, well, I'm not doing this anymore. You know what I mean? Again, there
Yeah.
is no, how do you get running 4 miles from home? Well, number one, you're 4 miles from home, so you got to get home. Like, and I'm not going to walk home, so I'm just as soon run. I don't know that I have like big breakdowns where I'm sitting there and bawling and this and that, but y'all have had those breakdowns in your life when something traumatic happens to you and you just cry it out, right? Like you've had that happen, and 12 minutes after you're like, God damn, man, I feel good. You know what I mean? It's like that release. And so, a little bit of this every day gets you a little bit of a release, however you want to get it.
You said at the ninth hour of a triathlon, if you were losing your nutrition, not nutrition, no water, no hydration, all these things wrong, and then the ninth hour it hits you and it hits you hard. I want to make the direct correlation to the ninth week of your life in which you have been isolated, in which you have chosen to not interact with others, in which you have not chose to move. When it hits you, it may hit you so damn hard that you can't get back up.
Yeah.
COVID like was a big spike for the world in suicide, especially in some of the countries where like you couldn't even like go outside.
Yeah.
Like so that's
I mean, and I think the isolation of it drove people to that. And I'm no expert on suicide, but I'll have suicidal thoughts all the time. But I don't look at them as actionable thoughts. It's things that just pass through my brain, like going to the store, doing, I mean, and I say that not being nonchalant. I'm saying that is how it is. But I did read something about, it's that suicide isn't an, there's some people that think about suicide for forever and then kill themselves, but that a lot of people commit suicide because suicide is a split second decision and not a, there's some people that think about it and talk about it all the time and nothing ever happened. You know what I mean? They just never do anything. And then there's other people that never say a word about it and then have a split second thought and kill themselves. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. I know the things that I think about and I know the things that I deal with. I know that I am not suicidal, but I don't think that just because, I mean, I could see that by saying that I have suicidal thoughts, some people will be like, "Oh my God, you
Three
can't,
things.
well,
you can't talk about that and not do X, Y, and Z." Well, yeah, you can.
Well,
So,
I want Joe to say what he's going to say, but I got to get three things in real fast. Like the listeners, I mean, we just made a big jump. We're talking about the act of suicide. We're talking about people who die by suicide or people who think of suicide, and by no means are any one of the three of us experts. So we're not experts, but what we are people that have lived our lives and we have seen things through our days and we've had our own thoughts. And I think it's important that we normalize conversation around this and say that if you're having these thoughts, that you're open to discussing them maybe with somebody that loves you, or call the phone number for prevention.
yep.
There's all that stuff's in the description of this podcast, but I don't want any of our listeners to think that we have the answers. But Joe, go ahead.
yeah, definitely no answers. I mean, and I have definitely been the same way. I've said it before, the suicidal thoughts things, but there's no chance that I would ever do that. But
Of
I would
course not.
say potentially since like, and I'm not trying to like say that these um, instances in my life did it, but getting married, having kids, more job responsibilities, moving, all this stuff, like anxiety through the roof for a while now, right? And I went down the route and have tested some medications, and that helps calm my anxiety. But also with anxiety does come some depression,
Yeah.
from time to time. But like going back to what you said, like you're one of the healthiest people I've ever met. I mean, you if you walk by a McDonald's, like you're angry. I'm like McFlurry, I'm in, right?
Right.
But your fitness in this and talking about depression, I know for me, like over the last 2 years, like neglecting my body hurt, right? And it didn't hurt me just physically in health and fitness, but my mind. And over the last month, as I, woke up one day and said, I gotta get this shit back together, like working out every day, moving every day, right?
Yeah.
At a minimum, even if that's just riding my bike around the blocks with the kids leisurely, like, because it's a rest or recovery day. I had in the last 4 weeks, almost 5 weeks of doing that, eating healthy, reducing drinking, like I have mentally felt significantly better. But you do have those, you're on top of the wave and something happens and you fall off. And I had that. Long story short, at that OAR concert, I got really drunk, got home, mom was here watching the kids, and apparently I said something along the lines of like, I don't belong here
Yeah.
on earth. And that led to conversations. I don't remember. I don't even remember getting home. So that's a whole nother story, right? Bad experience. But like the next day, my mom and I had to have that conversation. I was like, look, that I'm not going anywhere. Like,
Right.
sorry to freak you out. Like, I had a bad night.
Yeah.
And that happens, but I'm back on the horse, paddling back over the wave, and we're gonna get back after this thing. I fell off the board for a moment. Sorry to bother you. And like, but having that conversation is good. And like this podcast is good for like Rooster and I to have those conversations. And Rooster talked to 18 of my Marines the other day, and like I've had them come to me and say like, man, this is good, because there is that stigma, and I've had it realistically till probably meeting Rooster and like 5 years after, when our relationship started to grow. Like men don't have those conversations,
Right.
so like it's definitely good to talk to somebody, about whatever you're feeling, because it's going to make you feel better. Not everyone's going to be able to write it, and then not everyone's going to be able to write it and post it or record it, but just talk to a friend about anything.
Yeah, there's certainly a stigma that guys just don't talk about things. They just, as a rule, they just bottle stuff up and keep cramming it down further and further and further.
Yeah,
I don't know.
think about your uncle or your great uncle or your cousin that's your age living somewhere else. Like how many times have you and them had vulnerable, real, emotional conversation?
Yeah.
And it's not a high number. It just doesn't happen. And if there's anything that I hope to accomplish in this episode and in the conversations that I'm having with folks in life, is that if you're not feeling the highs, then try to feel the highs. If you're not feeling the lows, then try to feel the lows. And whatever's numbing your ability to feel the high and feel the low, remove it from your life. And if through communicating and talking about it and bringing yourself to a point of emotion because the sun's rising and it's making your eyes water and tear because this power of the sun, and it can be healing, is ultimately the bottom line.
Yeah, I mean, and I'll say too, I think I like when you're saying the sunlight. I think I find I enjoy, like, I don't like getting on a treadmill in a gym. I want to be outside. I think that being outside for me with the exercise and whatnot can kind of, again, it lets you step out of all your issues a little bit by being outside, at least for me.
But we have a lot of people listening to this who are, in some cases, single mothers who are raising their special needs children on their own, who are now no longer children, but they're adults and they have custody. Sometimes there's couples that are doing the same thing. And the second you remove kind of that structure as they enter the home, like you can see a big difference between the way that the caregiver's health and the one they're caring for's health goes, and compared to those with structure and those without. So really, really interesting. Just the power of that's so important.
Structure is a big thing. That's why you got to make your bed every morning.
Yeah. Look, I know I've said to y'all before, and this is kind of a tangent, but I think it matters. And I don't know what the answer is for y'all, but I think in the Ainsley's Angels family, y'all have an opportunity to affect healthy change in families more. I'm not saying that that's what y'all's mission is, like, but I've always thought like, hey, y'all have this captive audience of people, And healthier, I would think that healthier, happier caregivers, like they need that probably pretty badly, I would think. Like I can't imagine working as hard as a lot of y'all's families do, just to live day to day. Like that's tough. I don't know. And I'm not telling y'all's business. I've just always thought that there was an opportunity.
When on an airplane, when they tell you your mask drops down, you got to put yours on first before you help others. Because if I'm unhealthy and not taking care of myself physically, mentally, spiritually, how can I take care of those around? You have to take care of yourself first.
Right.
What are three things, Pat? I mean, you have this great idea of ways that we could influence the population to live healthier. What are three simple things every human could do to live a more healthier life?
Move daily. Right? Walking. Like I said, you don't have to do what we do. You have to do what like I always tell people, it's like, you don't have to do what I do. You have to do something that you like to do, or you're not going to do it. If you hate it, you will not continue to do it. So if it's just starting out with walking, start out with walking.
And for those that use a wheelchair to navigate, we go ahead, roll down the street, go do something. Yeah. There's one guy, Sean Lewis, one of our riders in Oklahoma. He'll get in his chair and he'll do like sit-ups, like he'll do dips. And this young man is not overly mobile, but he's doing more sit-ups and dips than I do in a week. And that's movement. What's number two?
Number two, I would think, is improve your diet. More vegetables, more home cooked meals, less stuff you can get in a package. I mean, those things, the biggest epidemic that we're going to face is all food based, I think. The quality of the American diet is terrible for the most part. I mean, go into a grocery store, walk around without shopping and see how many things don't come in a package. Not many.
One time, Pat, somebody told me, when you go to the grocery store, try to buy on the outer edge, not in the middle.
Sure. Yeah.
Three
would be some sort of, I don't want to say meditation practice, but some sort of self-awareness practice, like trying to step outside and define and think about the things that are affecting you and try to do something positive towards that. That's very large, but it starts with awareness. Maybe I'm a caregiver, and day in, day out, like it's just exhausting. Like, right. I can imagine that it can be very hard on folks, but some people may not. Some people probably get into this routine and are just like, they just think their life, it's drudgery that they have to, like, they're like, every day is going to be like that. But being aware of that is the first step to changing that, right? Like figuring out a different way forward. So again, that's not it's easy for me to sit on the outside and say that, but it seems, I don't want to say obvious, but it seems like something that would be very common.
You have seen the benefits in your life of movement, of health, of better diet or healthier diet, and of this idea of doing some self-reflection. You do your writings, you get out on your bike, and you get outside, and you go and you go and you go, and you own a company now that provides people with healthier options, and you've seen it impact yourself and your community. So you have a leg to stand on here, friend.
And then number 4 would be drink less.
And by that we mean carbonation, alcohol. Okay.
Alcohol. No, and I mean, me too. Like maybe I'll know this, maybe I don't know. If there's 4 beers that I like to drink in my refrigerator, I'll drink them every single day. If they're not there, I won't drink them. I mean, they will. I started out by saying like, hey, I'm not the medicated guy. I've never but ADD and depression medicines are basically speed and depressants, caffeine, alcohol. I'll start the day out with a pot of coffee and calm down in the afternoon by having 2 or 3 beers. And so one of the alcohol being a depressant, Joe, you said something about depression and about having anxiety because of it. What's very little known is that anxiety is one of the number 1 symptoms of depression. Wow. Like they're like this. And so if like you're drinking every night, and maybe it is only 3 or 4 beers to chill out, like, hey, I'm unwinding. The next day that makes you anxious. So you start out the day anxious, where you're already maybe starting out the day anxious. And then you're like, well, I'm going to drink coffee because I always got to drink coffee and so you're adding caffeine to the mix. And then you're spinning, and then you got to go do whatever you got to do for the day. And then by the end of the day, you're like, oh my God, I just want a fucking beer and just like relax for a second. Like, and then it's just doom. It's cyclical. I mean, that's just at least for me. This is all my 100% experience, not my medical expertise.
The same for me though, like when I was drinking every day, even if it was just 1 or 2 beers, whatever, you know, a couple glasses of wine, a couple mixed drinks, just like the end of the day, around dinner time, winding down, kids are running around crazy. I was also working out less. I was also eating worse. I was also not self-reflecting, not self-awareness. And now when I, by 70%, reduced my drinking, right, and only, or whatever the number is, right, only drinking on the weekend and not even drinking that much unless like there's something, you know, going on to an extent, like everything is better. And like, the depression, the link between depression and anxiety is real. And I didn't know that until updating my life insurance policy, and they, you know, pulled all my medical records and everything from the doctor, and they're like, hey, you take this medicine, are you depressed? I'm like, no, not really, I mean, everything's fine. And they're like, why do you take this? I was like, anxiety. And they're like, why do you have anxiety? I was like, well, I have 2 kids under 2 running around, and, you know, working 2 full-time jobs basically, and I'm a Marine reservist, and like there's a lot going on, like, and that was like, it was like frowned upon that I was taking this medicine. And it was like, at the doctor's office, I was like, well, is it better or worse for me to take that medicine or to drink a 12-pack every night? And they're like, well, not really either of them. It's like, take your choice.
Right.
One or the other. Might be both one day, but I don't know.
Well, something's got to give here.
Yeah.
Well, what a ride, dude. I have no idea where we are on the time, Joe, but I feel like it flew by faster than I wanted it to. Trying to take us to a place. I do want to take us out of this little spot we've been in to a little bit of humor. Pat, like, you know, like, I'm going to pull this little video up and I'm going to play it really loud. This is the origins. This is when it all started a long, long time ago. This idea of giving Joe the business.
For sure.
So we're here with the fam. We love it. We love the Ainsley's Angels. We love Rooster. We love Joe. We love to give Joe the business because he deserves it every single time.
The business. I love that.
Always give him the business.
Always
That day changed my life, though.
Okay, that day changed your life because Pat gave you the business, or what?
No, because it was miserably cold, and Pat gave me latex gloves. And was like, wear these as liners under your other one so your finger, you don't get cold. And ever since then, if it's cold, I have a box.
Yeah.
And man, life changed forever.
Yeah, because no wind can get through.
No, the little things.
Yeah,
it was really an accident. I think I didn't have any gloves one time, and I had but I was at an event and I was either serving food and I had gloves and I put like 2 pair on. I was like, oh man, this actually works.
Yeah, that give the business thing was cool. That was Spotlight Saturday, episode 199. We were getting ready to roll out and do TLM and just execute downtown Baton Rouge. Such a great time. And then I went back. We always go back every year, but I saw both Pat Fellows and Pat O, and we were at the finisher festival thing after the first day. And I said, hey, Joe Orth and I are going to start a podcast. You know, will you listen? And if you listen to the intro of this podcast, the comments, you know, give Joe the business, the Joe Show, Cup of Joe,
yeah,
all of that. That's Pat Fellows and Pat O'Brien. So giving them credit where it's due.
Okay. Right now I'm with Pat and Pat O, and you know, one of the Pats is doing what he does because he's always working. So, oh wait, he's back.
Not always working.
Hey, so here we go.
Vlogging.
This is fast questions.
Yeah.
Joe Orth and I are starting a podcast. What should we call it?
The Joe Show.
Wow. Give Joe the business.
That's right.
Okay, that's cool. Anything? Okay.
Cup of Joe.
Cup of Joe. That's fun. All right, next question. Would you listen?
Of course. At least once.
At least once. That's a.
I'm gonna give you a chance.
Thank you. Would you watch?
No.
Thank you. What platform would you use?
I don't know the platforms you do.
Apple Podcast?
I mean, yeah, you got to put it on Apple. You got to put it on Spotify.
Okay.
I mean, you could do YouTube because YouTube is you can do two things. Some people like video. I just don't.
Okay.
You're catching me on Spotify.
Okay, Spotify. Pato says Spotify. I got an Apple over here. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Very good. Should there be any specific segments that come to mind? Like, oh, it's Miller time. Like, any segments? Like now we're going.
What's the overall
I mean,
theme?
there's got to be something like,
yeah, like
as
we
the
need to
Rooster
know-
crows
as
or
the-
something
yeah.
like that.
As the Rooster crows. You know what? I got
Cock
enough.
time.
Fuck, he said cock time. Dude, I think
You knew
we're
it was
done.
coming.
Fuck. You know what? I said fuck. We're done. This was good. Thank you, gentlemen.
I mean, I don't know what we get for that. That and $1 will get us $1, right?
Yeah.
But
Maybe-
no, but we're happy to. I've loved getting to know you guys and becoming friends and becoming more than just acquaintances and be able to share these conversations, because I know we always get together and bullshit about some of this stuff when we're not even not recording it for austerity's sake or whatever. We always have good conversations and good fun. So I'm always happy to come on and talk trash and give Joe the business. I think I've been very, very kind to you today, Joe. I feel like this has
Man,
been.
see, I was almost gonna end it with that. I was like, man, I didn't get put the donut down, get on the bike.
No, I'm not.
Don't
I'm not
suck.
giving you anything, man. You're doing
Get
great.
any-
I'm not. I got nothing but love here today.
It's funny
Okay,
that y'all did that.
Tomorrow's a new day.
That's right.
It's funny that y'all did that just now, because of a lot of our listeners, they see Joe, he's out, he's always in shape, he's doing the runs, he's, this great model of, specimen. And he doesn't know though that people don't know that there's this guy, now they know, Pat Fellows, who has Joe's phone number, and every now and again he sends him a little text.
Yeah.
Little text. He just gives him the business. What would you say? Ever since you've met each other, probably at least once a month?
Maybe a little bit. It'll go a little bit further in between, but and to be fair though, Joe did reach out during training for a half Ironman. I was like, "What do I need to be doing? And I'd tell him what to do, and then he wouldn't do it some of the times. And so then I'm like, "Hey man, don't ask me what you're supposed to do." And then I say, "Hey, did you do that?" And you say no. I'm gonna give you shit about that.
It was the definition of don't ask questions you don't want the answers to. It would
right,
be
"Hey, what should I
the
do?"
most
And then
ridiculous thing. I'm like, I can't do that. That's absurd. I'll do a quarter of that and just muscle through it, I guess.
Yeah. I think I got him good when I told him to go buy bags of concrete and put him in a chair to pull on his bike.
Perfect. That's great guidance. He didn't do it.
I don't know. I don't think so. No, I mean, I cannot see him going to buy concrete and doing it.
So as we're rolling into kind of the completion of this episode, even though I wish we could keep going, but we'll have to wait and do that in person. We ask our guests, Pat, to kind of give us maybe a weekly word or something that they're going to use to kind of guide them.
Being present and being in the moment allows you the freedom to kind of to do multiple things. But if you're not present, you're just kind of spinning and doing other things. I don't know. So that's what I'll shoot for.
Yeah, no, I like it. If you're distracted with other things that aren't right in front of you, then you're thinking about those things. If you're present, then you can see if your son needs you to show up alongside of him and give him some good guidance. You can
Right.
see if the situation with your soulmate isn't exactly what it was the day you signed up for it. And you can then work on that together. But if you're focusing on, gosh, man, Nirvana, it's just not all it was cut out to be, then you're not really being present, right?
That's right.
Joe,
Correct.
what do you got, man? What are you going to do between now and you see Pat in January? What do you think you're going to leave this conversation with, or perhaps bring to the forefront between now and then?
Man, I mean, I do like the idea of being present because I definitely it's like the putting 100% effort, right? Your 100% today is not going to be your 100% tomorrow. Your 100% this morning is not going to be your 100% in the afternoon. And I strive to always do that, but I think I miss, right? And maybe it's 90%, right? Or 60%. But just trying to stay present, stay focused, keep, I think Pat talked about when being present, going to the store, the restaurant, and interacting with people, and just constantly having that base and foundation around you to allow yourself to be present. So I'm gonna take Pat's guidance and work on that so I can tell him if I was successful or not in January.
I like it.
I like it a lot. The other thing we do is we roll out here, and I'm going to take be present myself, gentlemen. I'm going to go ahead and take the easy way, and actually say that that's not the easy way. To be present is quite a task. There's so many distractors and so many things in our world. I mean, imagine if either one of us would have come into this podcast today with the news on behind our screen, or with one of our earphones being, the status of the Wall Street or some favorite music, and only one ear was listening to this conversation. Like, that's a great example of, like, you got to reduce the noise and focus on the thing right before us. So I like that. I'm going to do the same thing. Pat, we want to ask you, what do you want to leave people with as we conclude this episode?
Overall, there's this notion that, like, if we're realistic with ourselves and we think about it enough, everything, no matter how bad it is, everything ends up being okay, right? Like, it may take 2 months, but everything, just about all the time, everything seems to work out and everything ends up being okay. And some people will argue, well, no, I mean, you can spin it negative any way you want, but when the days are bad, I always think, you know what, this is going to be all right. Like, no matter how bad you think it is, it's usually okay.
It's never as bad as first reported. That's the essence.
Yeah.
Same idea.
Tough times don't last. Tough people do. Like,
Yeah.
my mom has a little knick-knack or whatever of that. And the day my dad died, we were sitting there. She was like, "Man, this is tough." And I saw it. I've never seen it before. I was like, "Well, tough times don't last. Tough people do." And
Yeah.
like, we were over there the other day, and I was like, "That thing is still there." I was like, "That can never leave that spot in your house." Like,
Right.
because it's true.
You know what? I got enough.
He's in charge.
We're done. This was good.
Yeah, we're done here. The structure of this building has reached its capacity.
Find your people, and if they make you feel sexy, even better.
As we're talking about, depression and suicide and some of these other topics, and just know that if you're feeling like you need to reach out to somebody, the United States has recently established a new thing. You can just type 988 instead of 911. You just dial 988. It's a National Suicide Prevention Hotline that connects you with somebody that you can talk with and listen. The rest of this recording is going to play out another 10 minutes or so. It's some stuff that I couldn't not publish it because it's really good conversation between three dads about essentially being dads and raising our kids in 2022. So I hope you enjoy the rest of this after the podcast conversation, and appreciate each one of you listening each week. Take care.
I'm always amazed at how different things were, and how, now, I mean, we were even talking about something as simple as seatbelts. Like, you remember, like, when they first came out, you're like, oh, yeah, I'm not wearing this shoulder strap. I'm going to put it behind me. It bugs me.
I do remember that. Yeah. And then the Ford came out a vehicle that it would come, the tempo, it would attach to you and you couldn't move it. Like, it put it on you because you couldn't be trusted to put it on yourself.
And when there were lap belts, you're like, oh man, and you just stuffed them in the seat so they wouldn't bother with you. You didn't put them on. You stuffed them away so you didn't have to see them anymore.
And so now we have kids, Joe's got two young boys, you and I've got, teenagers, adults, right? And we're asking them to put their seatbelt on. We're asking them to be kind to others. But the 80s and the 90s defined this jackassery that we used to always do.
It's insane, man. I guess that's, I guess our parents had the same thing. Maybe they saw it. Maybe, I don't know that they were as aware.
Well, it's funny, the kid thing's perfect because, I mean, so Pat, Rooster knows, it's in my neighborhood, I don't know, 100 yards away is our community pool, right? So we'll walk, ride the bike, sometimes throw the kids in the bed of the truck and cruise down there, right? Sometimes they'll just stand in the back seat of my truck. And the other day there was a sheriff in the neighborhood, and they're like, the sheriff's going to get you. We're not buckled up. And I was like, that's fine. We're literally going 8 miles an hour, 100 yards, nothing.
Your kids told you the sheriff's going to get you?
Owen said it. Yeah.
4 years old. He's like, Dad.
Yeah.
But it's funny that now, if I was on a main road and got pulled over, I'm getting a ticket.
Right.
It's a misdemeanor, at least, right?
Right.
And points on my driver's license. But yeah, when did car seats even get created?
I don't know. 1985, we drove to swim practice, and two of us rode in the back of a Toyota pickup truck 45 minutes on the interstate.
Yeah.
1992, we took that same pickup truck, put a freaking tarp in the back of the bed liner, filled it up with water, and drove from Lake Charles to Holly Beach to the Gulf of Mexico in our jacuzzi.
Yeah.
Dude, what? And my son cannot leave the home until he's buckled into his Ford Ranger pickup truck. And I know he's put kids in the back of it. He told me he has. And I don't like come down on him. But instead I think, yeah, dude, you're just going from like down the block. We went 45 minutes down to the Gulf of Mexico. Yeah. Oh, and yes, there was a case of beer, or frankly, an ice chest of beer in that jacuzzi.
Of course.
Jackasses. But we lived, and that's the part that sometimes get interesting. Like, we found a way to persevere through that and to live and to survive. So like some people think that you're making your kids weaker by not letting them do these crazy things. I don't know.
I mean, it's got to be a happy medium, right?
Yeah, I guess there does. I think there's a happy medium, because like you said earlier, the pendulum swinging. Like, if you take it so far and you like wrap them up in bandages anytime they leave the house, like, what, you know, and the second they get to college, it's like, get these bandages off of me.
Look, I've been on this high horse with some of the, I probably have had the conversation with almost every kid that I coach as parents about this notion. So my son's going to look at Roanoke. I know I texted y'all about helping us out and getting over there 5 hours away, and whenever he needs his butt wiped. But you know, we spend all these thousands and thousands of dollars on kids' athletics. And when our kids turn 18, high school athletics is over on May 24th. They have a summer off. They go to college. They no longer have the structure of athletics for the most part, right? So they no longer have the structure of daily school. They don't have the structure of trying to balance doing schoolwork and doing athletics and doing all these things together. And now they're completely on their own. They can do whatever they want, and they can drink and they can party. And we wonder why kids aren't successful when they go off. Like, I think that there's and it's not going to be me, I'm too old to be starting this, but there is a spot in college athletics for kids to something beyond intramurals, right? Something that's organized, where Joe, who was a 440 miler, but wasn't a 420 miler, so couldn't run D1 track and field, can still have the structure and the same things that I'm getting for, you know, fighting off depression. Like, my kid is a different kid when he runs, night and day. He's on no medication. When he is not running, he's depressed. It's insanity. It's completely different. So I'm on this high horse of trying to figure out ways. Like, my kid could go to school almost for free, but I'm willing to spend 20 grand a year for him to go run somewhere, because I think it's that important.
Yeah, it's a great point. And in the Marine Corps, Joe and I, as
Same
soon as we
thing.
got in, yeah, they're like, hey, flag football, softball, different. And it was intramural, but it was still the structure of, we're going to practice, we're going to go to the game, we're going to have camaraderie, competition. Yeah. And it's totally different than the things we do in the Marine Corps for camaraderie and competition, which also can be healthy. But it was something back to that semblance of what we knew, where we were comfortable in high school. Same kind of idea.
But then the Marine Corps also gave you the structure, right?
Yeah, sure. A lot of it.
Yeah.
Sometimes too much.
Too much. Yeah.
And I get that. And I don't know that I will tell you this. I was never ADD, ADHD, or any of those things until I got out of high school. I mean, maybe I was, but I never had, you know, when I got to college and I didn't have to go to class and I could get by on being smart enough or whatever, like, I was this very focused kid. I was going to be a doctor. That was what I was going to do. And I lost all that drive when I lost structure.
That's not abnormal, or it's not the norm, but like, there's many kids, and I didn't go to, you know, brick and mortar college, but like, a lot of my friends did, and a lot of them didn't make it, you know, like, because they lose that structure, especially depending on what school you go to, the party school, big city, your way. Yeah, absolutely.
You know, it's funny y'all said that, because there's a lot of people, whether it's 30 years in the military or 30 years, 40 years in an industry, and the folks will retire, and the Marine Corps and all that, you'll see us grow beards and our hair out and all this other kind of stuff. But like, in the civilian sector as well, people are passing away within like 5 years of retiring.
Yeah.
And
it's that lack of structure, lack of, you're becoming more isolated. You're not doing all the things, and that shift, there's something to be said to structure and routine and camaraderie and non-isolation.
having to be places, right? Like have to be somewhere at a certain time. Like,
Yeah.
I know that we bought a house, the FJR bought a house and we're redoing it so that we have an office, and I've been working at home and I'm terrible working at home. Like everything I do is a whirlwind of like, this has got to get done right now, done, on to the next thing. This has got to get done. Like no focused work, no structure to my days, which doesn't help me at all.
Yeah. It brings back your ADHD is just screaming loud, and your OCD is trying to come in there, but it can't. And then you're not being present at the task, and it's suddenly this whirlwind.
Yeah. Well, and not having, it's basically you don't have to be accountable to anything. You're basically only accountable to yourself. And then when you're wired like I am, like I don't give me a deadline, because if you give me a deadline, it will get done on the deadline. Like I won't get done early. Like, so I don't work well. Like I need more structure than I get a lot of times, for sure.